Checking it's recording. Yeah, it is. Cool.
You ready?
I was born ready.
Hello, welcome to the Blockbusters. My name's Conor. This is our podcast. Myself and Rado, he's listening on the other side here. This is our podcast about the wonderful world of cinema and TV, about movies and shows that we love, no matter how big, no matter how small. You can listen to us on all of your favorite podcast services. The easiest place to find us, you can go to theblockbusters.net, or you have this cool new fancy link. It's pod.link/theblockbusters. Super easy. It's got all the little buttons on there for all the different services that we're on. You want to go over there and sell your soul to Spotify? No problem. Do it. You want to listen on Apple Podcasts? We got you. You're an Overcast user like I am? Don't worry about it. Overcast is on there too. You got all the different options in the world. Rado and I sit down every fortnight or so. It's not a great schedule, but it's close enough. And we talk about the movies and TV shows that we've been watching. You can go back and find all of our previous episodes. We'd love it if you would subscribe. We'd love it if you would give us those 5-star ratings and even maybe tell some people about us as well, because we're trying to build an audience. We really like talking about movies and TV shows, and we would like you to talk about them with us as well. We're on Twitter, we're on Letterboxd as well. We're the Blockbusters over there. We have our own accounts on there. You'll find them if you look hard enough. It's not that hard, to be honest with you. Music of the TV show, music of the episode is by the venerable Scott Holmes, and you can find all of his stuff at scottholmesmusic.com. He probably has no idea that we do this for him every single episode, but go use Scott Holmes, make kick-ass music, and we appreciate it, and it sounds great on our show. I do the artwork on the show, and all of the incredible editing is, of course, done by Rado. He's the one that puts in all the hard work for it. Today, we're going to talk about a couple of news stories. Then we're going to jump in and we're going to review Nomadland, which we've both been looking forward to for a long time now and spoke about a lot on our previous episodes. And then we're going to finally recap and share our thoughts on Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So that is this episode, which is episode number 42 of the Blockbusters. You're very welcome. Strap in, it's going to be a good one.
Woo! That is a positive energy I wanted to hear every week from you, Conor. Wow, that was great. That was amazing. Hello. I didn't even say hello, but yeah, I'm here. Yes, with Conor. Conor, yeah, I put some news in there for us to talk about, and a lot of stuff is happening, and I think three big topics. And you said, "Oh, let's put a discussion about the MCU trailer," and I thought to myself, we probably could do an episode about it because I'm sure you have plenty of things to say. So a few days ago, probably 5 days ago, suddenly out of the blue on the internet, there was this sort of I don't know even how to call it, because it wasn't like a proper trailer. It was just like a video of the released by the Disney and MCU or Marvel that would show us excitement of going back to the cinema, right? So that was I think this was the thought behind making this video. So it had clips from previous movies, and incredibly, it had a recording of reaction of the audience to the ultimate moment of Endgame, and it was like, whoa, this is big. Like, first of all, studio releasing something that was recorded in the theater, but this was to show people that how exciting going to the cinema is, because you can have amazing TV, like myself and Conor, we do have great TVs. You can have great sound systems. You can watch the latest releases, but this will never beat your reaction to watching a film like Avengers Endgame in the cinema with 50,000, exaggerating.
You watch it at Wembley Stadium?
Wembley Stadium, yeah. But when you watch a film with 50 people, 100 people, 200 people, it's so incredible. So this trailer has it, like this clip has it. But after that, they also showed the slate of coming releases. They revealed some titles, and they show some footage from a film, especially you are excited about, because your new favorite director, Chloe Zhao, has been awarded an Oscar. And we saw a few essentially just few scenes, glimpses, like, I don't know, 10 seconds, 5 seconds. It was not very much from Eternals, not the Eternals. I need to ask you how excited you were when this dropped, and how many times did you watch that clip?
Do you know, I seen it get linked a few times on like Twitter and places like that, and the sort of still frame that they've chosen for it is the Black Widow in the white costume, which you've seen quite a number of times now, obviously with that movie being delayed. So I actually skipped over watching it for the first sort of half a day that it had come out, despite people being like, oh my god, this is really cool. I just thought, oh, it's probably nothing I haven't seen already, and I've seen enough Black Widow stuff at this point to have kind of been like, yeah, I don't need to see any more. I don't need any more little clips of this show. I'm ready for it now to just be here and for me to sit down and watch it. So I'll pass over on this. And then I started to see some people talk about, Eternals. I was like, oh, I don't actually think we've seen anything from Eternals yet. And and then I seen someone talking about the Fantastic Four logo, which we did see back in December time. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll go ahead and watch it. And oh my god, is this a masterful hype trailer? If there ever was one, right?
The title of that trailer is Marvel Studios Celebrates the Movies. And this is it. This is a celebration of films and communal experience in the cinema.
Yeah. And this is the thing, like I preach so much on here about the MCU in particular, is that the MCU still, despite being such a humongous franchise and generally positive reviews, I still think it gets tarnished with a brush of it's just a big money cash grab, superhero movies, we're all bored of them, etc., 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 Disney, yada yada yada. But I really think what they have cultivated, and very much what you can tell kind of pours out of Kevin Feige in charge of all of this, is an admiration for cinema and that communal experience that you talked about. Like, they are making movies for the big screen. And sure, it's all about, bottom line at the end of the day, right? That's always part of it. But it's not to say that takes away necessarily from what they're still trying to achieve. And this trailer or recap or whatever it is that you want to call it is such a celebration of that. It's like, look at what we've done. Look at all this amazing stuff. And it starts with the Stan Lee quote about people, about loving being around people. It's amazing and it's so heartfelt. And then you get to the middle of it, and it's the scenes in Endgame. If you've seen Endgame in the cinema, that is what you will remember. Like, I remember I had such a unique experience of watching Endgame, because Enya and I had actually went on holidays at the time, and we were in Seattle. And I remember the tickets going on sale. I remember watching for the tickets months and months and months in advance, but I had to watch for the US tickets to go on sale. And when the US tickets went on sale, I remember having to find, like, where is the IMAX that I can see this in Seattle? And it was in the Science Arena, or the Science Center. And I remember going that evening, like, beautiful, warm, like, Seattle evening. It was the midnight showing, although there was a showing that had happened just before it, and you're getting there and everyone was dressed up. And it's a sort of cinema where, like, people are like there's pizza being passed around, like, people were there in groups, and there's just so much energy in that theater at that time. And that sequence, I remember, like, people absolutely losing it, especially it being in the US. Like, here audiences are a little bit more reserved. I think if you went to a midnight showing here, you're gonna get the super fans who are gonna like
absolutely, yes, yeah.
But you go to, like, a bit more of a reserved attitude to things like that here. But being in the US, and I just remember, like, as I looking down a few rows ahead of me, and someone had it was like a kid, and he had an infinity gauntlet that was absolutely huge on his hand, and he had his, like, fist held in the air as it was happening, and it's like, this is just such an amazing experience. And then the latter half we move into of the video, we move into what is coming, what's slated, and that's the first time we've seen Shang-Chi, which we got the trailer for a few weeks back. We got a few more snippets from it, and then we've seen some stuff from Eternals, which we haven't seen really anything at all yet, other than a few stills.
I'll ask you about the Eternals, but let's go through what was actually announced, because there was things confirmed and the dates were confirmed. So we will have Eternal is going to be November this year. And this is super exciting. For next year, we have Black Panther. And this is going to be Wakanda Forever. And this is July 2020. Interesting. We know the title of the film. We don't know what's going to be, but the title, it's so like this. There couldn't be a better title for Black Panther 2. Title. It's Wakanda Forever. I think it's going to be, homage to Chadwick Boseman as well. Captain Marvel is going to be called The Marvels, and more interesting, who's going to accompany Brie Larson. There's probably going to be Kamala Khan as Miss Marvel over there, and we're going to see Teyonah Parris as Monica Rambeau. Interesting. That's gonna be interesting. What else we've got? We got Ant-Man confirmed for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and I love that title. I love that title. And the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. This is 2023. Wow, I am, like we talk about those films, and sometimes I'm the person who's like, my God, I don't care, but I am very interested to see those films. First of all, in the theater. This is going to be next week when the theaters are opening in England. And I know that I think one of the two big films going to be released, like new films, going to be New Saw, and it's going to be also A Quiet Place 2. So again, Quiet Place 2 is something I would love to watch with the audience, because I remember watching that with the audience. The first one, when everyone was just like sitting really quietly and someone was trying to eat popcorn and everyone was just like staring at him like, don't you fucking dare eating this popcorn, because we will go. This is the experience I've been like craving for such a long time, and hopefully we can go back to the theaters really, really soon. The one thing I wanted to talk to you about, and we're gonna discuss Chloe Zhao's film later on in our program today, but what was your first impression of seeing the footage from Eternals?
I thought it looked really interesting because it looks filmed very differently than a lot of other Marvel stuff, because a lot of Marvel stuff has a look, and although they have their own stylistic choices, there's still a consistency to how each of the movies look. And this is the first one where I've seen it where I thought, oh, that looks different. I don't know really what it was about it. Just something about it stylistically looked a little bit different. I do remember reading a interview or watching an interview with Chloe Zhao talking about the creativity that Marvel actually let her have. And a big part of that was allowing her to film on location, which is not super typical for these movies, where they are very often on sound stages and in front of green screen and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that this was, there's no green screen or anything to be found here, but when you do shoot on location, it does grant you more options as to focal length and everything like that of your camera. And some of the sequences just looked different than what we're used to seeing, in a good way. I was super happy with that, and that will come back around later in our conversation about Nomadland for me. But I'm very excited then this made me more excited for Eternals, actually. Just watching there's only maybe 7 seconds of footage here collectively, but it all looks very, very interesting. The cast looks great, the costumes look great, the style looks great. I'm very, very intrigued to get a trailer for this, which I am sure is probably going to come very soon, maybe in and around Black Widow.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure when Black Widow is going to hit theaters, they will release the trailer to play it before the film. It might be just like short the trailer or something. But you texted me saying, oh, this is the very different look of the Marvel film I've seen. I've never seen something like this before. And I watched it for the first time. I thought to myself, it's fine, it's normal. But then I watched Nomadland again, and then I came back to that trailer and I thought to myself, this is Chloe Zhao. This is like the shots. Right? The shots are like the how the camera is set up, the what's happening in the background. So you have a golden hour, and how this light is set up. And you're like, yeah, okay, this is Chloe Zhao. Like I can, for the first time, I can see the director here behind the film in like 7 seconds, like you said. It's not like a huge thing, and this probably hasn't happened since we had the Taika Waititi, doing Thor Ragnarok, because
Yeah.
in Thor Ragnarok you could actually just put like 10 seconds of the dialogue there, and you're like, this is something weird. This is not a typical dialogue you've seen in the films before. So I am interesting to see what's gonna happen. I'm also very, very curious to hear your opinion about Nomadland. So let's move on, maybe, unless you wanted to add something to this trailer.
No, other than, can you believe Black Widow is, I think, a month and a half or so away now, and that's the first Marvel movie since I met you for the first time, that fateful day, because that was the day, that was the week that Spider-Man Far From Home came out in 2019. Like, that is insane to think about how long it has been since a Marvel movie. Now, with the WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier, it has certainly filled a gap, and it has certainly brought a lot of that back, and that brought that energy back in and filled that gap. But it's still crazy to think it has been so long since we've actually seen anything. And I think it might have done it the world of good. I think that might be one of those things like, oh, do you know what? Actually, having that gap is actually a positive thing. It lets wider audiences take a step back, not get too burnt out on everything. Even though I think they're doing a pretty good job with mixing it all up and having things feel fresh, bringing in people like Chloe Zhao and to do that, it still always a possibility of people getting burnt out. Like, okay, I'm kind of like, right, it's a lot of I'm over Thor at this point. I'm over Captain Marvel or whatever, or Black Widow. But no, I think they've managed to do a really, really good job, and maybe the pandemic actually will be a little bit of a blessing for them in the long run, for just giving audiences a bit of a breather before they get their teeth kicked in with Phase 4. Let's go.
This is a completely different discussion, but I was listening to a few people interviews and listening to webinars, and because right now there's a big expectation of like what's going to happen. Are people going to go back to the theaters? Are people going to say, oh, we're fine actually sitting at home and watching movies? But there was one person that said something that resonated with me, and that person was absolutely right. I don't remember now where I heard it, when I read it, but there were people before who would never go to the cinema or would go to the cinema very rarely, and those people still be the same people. They will not go to the cinema. But people who used to go to the cinema, who love cinema, will not trade it for experience sitting at home. They will go back to the theaters. I don't think there will be a massive change. I think at the beginning, some people might be hesitant, but as soon as everything opens, you will see a weekend when there's kids running around, there's this, parents take their kids to see the movie, everyone's, having fun. This is going to be like it was before.
Yeah. You know what? Bars opened here for the first time. Bars and pubs opened here, outdoor only, for the first time about 2 weeks ago. And people were queuing for 3 hours in some places to get in.
That's Belfast, eh?
And it's not even to get in. Yeah, well, that's another conversation. But that's not even to get in. That's to get outside where you can then have a drink.
And it's not Spain. It's not like 20 degrees. It's like 12.
It's wet and cold and windy. And here's a little bit of a news flash. It's cheaper and more comfortable and easier to drink at home. But yet people still were like, I know, I want to go and spend like £5 per drink just to sit in a public space with other people and do it. And it's the same thing for the cinema. It's the same principle. It's like, it's cheaper to do it at home if you want it to be. It's more comfortable. You don't have to go anywhere. You can get a big screen, get a good sound system. But it's not what people want to do. It's not that. It's the same principle. It's a communal experience. And that's as simple as that. So yeah, it might just take a little while to get the engine revving on it, but I guarantee you that no sort of crazy pandemic stuff left to go, because who really knows what could happen. by the time we get to the likes of Eternals, you're gonna see packed screens again.
Yeah.
For that.
Amen to
You're
that.
gonna-
Yeah. So here, the Blockbusters podcast, we are urging everyone, if you feel comfortable, go back to the cinemas once the cinemas open. We are big fans of going to the cinemas, and we love watching films in the theater.
We should get business cards printed, and every time we go to the cinema, we put them in the cup holder. So the next person comes in, just finds our podcast,
That's one of your genius ideas. Write them down. Write them down.
Oh dear.
Conor, a few the news, maybe not that huge for you to discuss, but definitely interesting. So this is something that broke just recently, that NBC, this is the channel in the US that it would normally stream Golden Globes or show Golden Globes live on broadcast Golden Globes on their network. They said in the statement that they will not do it for the 2020 because of the changes that Hollywood Foreign Press Association needs to take. And as a result of that, one of the results was that Mr. Tom Cruise has handed back his Golden Globe Award to HFPA, saying they need to change. So this is a big statement, I think, from the network, a bigger statement from Tom Cruise, and that something would need to happen. This is a good thing in general, that things need to change. Golden Globes need to be more inclusive in terms of the members, and they need to be more transparent on how things are being selected. But we have just finished Oscars season, like the awards season, and they decide to do it right now. Seems like a weak idea. Seems like no one's going to remember in half a year that this happened. I don't know what's your take on that. I think it would make a little bit more impact if NBC would set that towards the Golden Globes, maybe not a week before, but few months before that. Right now we are like in a dead zone, essentially. There is no awards to be handed, there is no one's playing for anything. So I don't know. I don't know if it wouldn't have a bigger impact if we would have done it, in September, October, or November, when people start talking about those awards. What's your take on that?
I think a lot of this is, so we spoke about this a few weeks back on one of our episodes, didn't we? We had a conversation about
we did,
the practices and the strange things, and them being invited to Emily in Paris is set, for like a kind of like a lavish tour and stuff like that. And there was a discussion was starting to happen then, and I can't remember who it was that published the article at the time. If it was like the Hollywood Reporter published the first sort of big article about them, which sort of condemned them and called into question a lot of their practices. I think that was really the catalyst for this, but I think that it maybe came a little bit too late in the game to have pulled the plug on the show for the likes of NBC, because there's just so much sponsorship money and advertising money and everything on the table there. Would have been a very brave move, and I would have applauded them for doing it if they had have done it at that time. But at the same time, you got to be a little bit cautious, where if you're only getting a single report of it, even if it's corroborated a little bit, you might want to just make sure you're doing your due diligence and your own checks before you're deciding to pull the plug on something like that. So NBC may well have been investigating this over the past few weeks or months to find out like what is happening here. Let's have some conversations, and when they maybe have come away going, we're really not satisfied with anything that's happening here, so we're gonna pull the plug on this now. And then that has kind of become the catalyst. We've seen Scarlett Johansson was another big name just in this last sort of 10 days or so that came out. I think Mark Ruffalo was as well, was quite outspoken amongst many others. But Scarlett Johansson was the first story I seen a few days ago that was the big name to really kind of talk down on their practices and what they're getting up to. You and I kind of spoke about how it's not even that great of a show or an award really either. Like it is second fiddle to the Oscars. It's like it always strikes me as more of like a big sort of a palm greasing, like rubbing shoulders event for the who's who in Hollywood than it is about the actual, awards themselves or accreditation to anybody. It is just like it's a big festival in the and celebration of Hollywood, and we're not really interested in actually awarding anybody anything. We're just interested in having a party. That's what the Golden Globes always kind of struck me of, as opposed to the Oscars, which is a little bit more the Academy Awards, which is a little bit more along the lines of we're actually here to try. Whether we succeed at it is another question, but we're actually here to honor and award talent amongst the industry and have people represented. This is where people actually that work in the industry will give you something like, oh, we think this is something worth rewarding. Whether that Golden Globes will be a bunch of foreign press journalists, air quotes journalists to essentially take selfies with the big stars, give golden statuettes to people and have like big bags of like goodies and then can take selfies and whatever. Like this is I mean, I get you what you're saying. I think the canceling like 2021 broadcast would not work, but I think announcing this a little bit towards like 2022 maybe would have worked better. I don't know what's gonna happen, but again, change is a good thing. I think HFPA need to change. They need to do something about it, and maybe people start caring about Golden Globes as much as they think they do. They're not important, and we're talking about them again for 10 minutes. Well, to finish, I guess I would say that when I read the story about NBC, my gut instinct was that this is not going to be something that lasts. This will be reinstated, and NBC will broadcast this show next year. I would be almost certain about that. This seemed to be more of like a very aggressive threat. Like, get your shit together. That's why they want to do it now. Do it now so that you give them 4 months or whatever to get everything in order. 3 months, whatever that is that they want to take for it, to get your shit in order, and then we can come out and make an announcement that we are satisfied with the attempts that they've made to be more representative across the board, to take the show more seriously, etc., 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 and we're now ready and feel like we can host the show again, and that's what I think is going to happen here. I don't know when that will be announced, probably in a few months' time, given that they do get their shit together. But when I first read it, I didn't think that this was actually going to last. It seemed to be more like, we're not doing it. Go away and fix your stuff, and then we'll do it. What it really would take is a lot of big name stars like Tom Cruise or Scarlett Johansson to say, we're never going back to the Golden Globes. That's what will really take to like really rattle a cage and say, okay, is this going to be a show ever again? Are we ever going to have a Golden Globes, or is it dead in the water? If half of Hollywood starts saying, yeah, I'm not being part of this, and it doesn't really matter what NBC say, then if half the people that are big players in Hollywood take themselves out of the equation, then I think they would be in a lot more trouble. This is more just like a public airing of their dirty laundry. So it is.
If HFPA wants to employ 2 foreigners for them,
we are foreigners for them.
Yeah, we definitely can. We both live in the United Kingdom, right? I'm from Poland. So yeah, we qualify. We definitely can improve the overall quality of HFPA and be the correspondents from where we live. If they pay for us to travel and watch films over there, I don't mind.
Yeah, I will go to the Emily in Paris set. I'm not above doing it.
Definitely, I will go 100%. And I will be impartial to give him the award to everyone. Right, we're laughing, but there is no laughing matters, because the biggest news, I think, people talk about it for days and it's not been resolved, and we have to tiptoe a little bit around it to make sure that we not kind of say that someone's done something, but has been definitely accused of something. So actor, producer, director Noel Clarke who was just recently awarded by BAFTA by his live achievements, has been also accused of harassment, bullying by 20 women. And this was interesting, if not horrific story. Interesting from the point that when BAFTA announced that Noel Clarke's going to be awarded his Life Achievement Award, some women have contacted BAFTA and they said that Noel Clarke is a criminal and he's been harassing and bullying people. BAFTA said there is no evidence. We're going to carry on with that award. So they have given the award, and I think a day or two after, The Guardian has published an article and if you read this article, it's a fantastic piece of journalism. 20 women accusing Noel Clarke across years, across different productions, of what was his kind of wrongdoing, what was his behavior, how did he behave. And this is not like first page names. These are people who work as a crew, as a cast as well, but not the biggest names ever. And after that, BAFTA was like, whoa, okay, so there is something going on. So they said they'd taken the award from him and they suspended him. So big deal. What happened next? Noel Clarke says that he's sorry for his actions, but he's going to seek professional help, but he denied any sexual misconduct. We're not here to judge and to say what happened. I think this is there's something in there if so many women come out and say that stories like this happened. Also, I think a few days later, The Guardian published another article saying that there was bullying and harassment on the set of Doctor Who, which this is where you would know. I mean, this is how I know Noel Clarke. He was a star of Doctor Who for many years. And BBC is shocked by those accusations. What actually came out as well, that John Barrowman, who was a co-star of Noel Clarke, also was behaving rather strange on the set, that he was even exposing himself to his cast and crew at some occasions, and he said he did that and he regrets those things. I think this is showing there is something going on in the industry, and the more people are starting to talk, and way before people would not comment on things, they would not say things out loud. Right now there is more to win, because companies that work with people like that, they say we're not going to work with Noel Clarke anymore, and Sky have dropped his show. ITV stopped showing his TV series, so they aired 2 episodes, and the third one they were meant to air, they said they didn't air it. They put it on ITV Player for a few days for people to watch, but it was not aired and it was not broadcasted. So big decisions have happened without anyone going to court yet, but this is there is something going on, and it's a big change that people can speak up about those behaviors. And it's a horrific story that things like this were happening for years and years. I know that you don't even know who Noel Clarke is, and you saw his picture, you're like, no idea. But the whole story is a big blow to like a British industry. It's almost like what's his name? What was his name? The Weinstein? Harvey Weinstein, right? In the US.
Yeah. I don't know much about Noel Clarke, to be honest with you. Like I'd said to you before recording, and when I seen that you'd put it in there, I have just loosely followed the story since I seen it starting to break, but who he was, I have no idea. There's photos of him standing in front of like the telephone booth and stuff like that, or the police booth or whatever, and I was like, I've never even seen these screens before, these photographs of this person, never mind the actually seeing him in the show. But then again, my opinions on Doctor Who are in the gutter, so they are. It's a bottom-rate TV show if you want to really hear something controversial. Bottom-tier TV show. So I don't really have much vested interest in caring about whether or not this guy gets his comeuppance or not, or whether or not he gets dropped from Sky or whatever. He seems like he's a piece of shit who's done piece of shit things, given that there are a substantial amount of allegations from him that would typically indicate that, this wasn't just like a one-off thing or something like that. He has clearly got a history of being a bad person. And this is the case, like, as kind of to what you're saying, that we're seeing more and more and more, is that people's idea of what is a bad person is changing, and what they're willing to accept as behavior is changing. And you'll see a lot of people talk about it, probably about, like, you know, snowflakes and cancel culture and this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, if you're someone who is making other people uncomfortable or miserable in their jobs for your own benefit and satisfaction, whether or not it's because you think it's funny or you're having a laugh or whatever, you're probably not a great person. And there are more and more people who are just being now saying, you know what, I'm not really standing for this anymore. I shouldn't have to come to work to do my job and do makeup or set cameras up or set light rigs up or props or stage or anything like that. I shouldn't have to be a director, a co-star, anything, and be subjected to a workplace environment that makes me uncomfortable just so you can have your laughs, or worse, so that you can have your kicks even from it. And people's just, their tolerance levels for this is just lowering, and they're just saying enough is enough. If you're going to show up to work and be an asshole, then you're going to get called out for being an asshole. So don't go and have a big pity party whenever all of your career starts to crumble around you. You can look at Harvey Weinstein. You can look at this guy here. You can look at, even if we briefly spoke about it, the James Franco, before we recorded, James Franco. Seth Rogen said this week that he's no longer going to work with James Franco. And, you know, based on his previous behavior. And again, that was all allegations as well. But if someone who would have been considered one of his very close friends is willing to come out and say, I'm not working with him anymore, then, I mean, it says quite a lot, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm always in favor of this, because I've never felt like, and you know, I'm sure if someone was to have a recording of every minute of work time that I've ever spent in my entire life, they'd probably find a substantial amount of them where I was being a dickhead. But I've never demeaned other people. You know, I've never went and for my own benefit, for having a laugh or anything like that there, right? I've never actually went and outwardly made other people feel uncomfortable, because as soon as I start to make someone else feel uncomfortable, I start to get uncomfortable, and I'm like, I don't want to be doing this. But some people seem to take a great amount of joy in it. So I don't know too much about the story. And again, as you said, we got to tread lightly around it. But it seems fairly obvious that this guy is part of that bigger problem of people who think that they can go to their work and they can just make other people feel however they want, because they're the star or whatever it might be, or they're their boss, or they have superiority over them in the workplace, and then they make other people uncomfortable, and they'll just get away with it. It's all a laugh. Why just relax? It's a laugh. We're having a laugh. It's just a joke. It's like, not anymore, it's not, because now you don't have a fucking job, so fuck you, okay?
Yeah.
And that's kind of my attitude to stuff like this. It's like,
I think
you know
the kind of dark part of that is a lot of accusations of sexual harassment, of those offers.
Way worse.
Of those offers when apparently Noel Clarke was threatening co-stars of his films that if they don't sleep with him, their careers will be finished. And, you know, I'm not surprised hearing this, that people do that, because we are horrible. Like, in general, people are horrible, can be horrible to each other. So I see that someone would do it, but they shouldn't be. We should speak up, and not 5 years after that, but right now, react to it. So we changed the culture. And I admire those women, those people who came out and said those things, because this is not easy. This is sometimes those people will, this is their life, this is their job, and they're risking their job by saying the truth. And I admire that. Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, it takes incredible bravery to do something like that, and I admire it so much. And what I love about it so much is that it is forcing the improvement of this workplace culture by exposing it. Because if you acted like that, let's say you acted like that in the early 2000s or the mid 2000s, right? And no one ever said anything. You just got away with it, and you were like, this was a big deal, right? So I'm fine, and it's all, it wasn't sexual misconduct. It was all consensual, or it was just a joke, or whatever way they painted it, whatever lie they told themselves in their head. And then you get to like the mid sort of like 2010s, and I get through to 2015 and stuff, and like there's just a little bit of a bubbling starting to happen. And then you get the Harvey Weinstein stuff, and then you have James Franco, or what's the comedian's name from Master of None as well? Well, there was Louis C.K. was another in terms of entertainment industry and actors and stuff like that. Louis C.K. was another person, like huge amount of sexual misconduct allegations. And
recently Arnie Hammer.
I was just about to say Arnie Hammer recently, right? So, you get to that like mid to 2015 sort of range, and then the last 5 years or so, and you really got to start and ask yourself, like, if you're that sort of person going on set, those little things that you might used to do, you're going to start and stop doing them, because all of a sudden you now have a reason to worry. I can't do that anymore. I can't. I don't want to be doing that. Don't want to get caught doing that. Kevin Spacey, that's another one, right? Mm-hmm. Another one, just exiled, gone. See you later. Don't need people like you. And it's so good, because you hope then that by 2025, that for the most part, there'll always be cases of this, I think, but for the most part, you have improved the working conditions and the livelihoods of so many people in this industry, who can now feel that they can comfortably go to work without being sexually harassed, without being assaulted or abused verbally or mentally, because the people who used to do it are now too fucking afraid to do it, because they might lose everything. Because that's what they're losing. They're losing everything. We're taking it all away from them. Like, we're never seeing Kevin Spacey in a movie again, right? It's gone, done for. And that's what I enjoy so much about watching this from the sidelines, is that it's like, yeah, if you are this type of person and you're still behaving like this, just know that there's people coming for you. Your time will come to you. You're not going to be able to act like this and just keep getting away with it. You can put it down to like throwing temper tantrums or whatever, but you're not going to get away with it. Michael Bay, you're fucking next. You're next. All right.
This was our B-weekly Conor's What Grinds My Gear. I love listening to Conor when he like fires up. I
said to you before, I wasn't even going to talk about this, because I was like, I have nothing to say.
I've got nothing to say.
I don't like bad people, and I like seeing bad people suffer. So here I am.
You're like a superhero almost, in a costume.
Just useless in every other way.
Conor, before we move on to the reviews, I wanted to ask you if you have seen the new trailer that dropped a few days ago. Venom, Let There Be Carnage.
Yummy.
Good evening, Eddie.
Hey, Mrs. Chen.
Good evening, Venom.
Function Hall, Mrs. Chen.
He says hi.
One is the loneliest number that you'll ever do.
I've been thinking about you, Eddie.
Two can be as bad as one. It's the loneliest number.
Because you and I are the same. Every decision we ever make. Who do we leave behind? And how do we leave them? Waiting in the darkness for the rescuer who never comes. back, Eddie Brock. It's been a long time. Miss you so much.
I
Watched
have
it?
seen it, yeah.
Yeah.
I have, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, okay. So interestingly, this trailer dropped, and then I found like a video of Andy Serkis, who's the director of that film, doing a trailer breakdown, which was the first time I've seen something like this. Andy Serkis as a director talking you through the trailer, saying, "Oh, this is the bit when the Venom and the guy, they come here and they do this." I'm like, okay, is he gonna explain the whole film? It was like super peculiar, but again, interesting. So Venom 2 is a long-awaited sequel to Venom, and this film is gonna release in September 24th, 2021. And so I see, I can hear that the Conor is not impressed with what's gonna happen to Cletus Cassidy, aka Woody Harrelson. That he's gonna change to Big Red Carnage. I think this film looks as interesting, quote marks, air quotes, as the original. If you were not a fan of Venom, I don't think you're gonna be excited for Venom 2. Again, film to watch in a theater. Yes, mindless joy, but is it that different from the films you're getting from the MCU? I know this is almost an MCU, but it's a Sony production. So, like, probably my girlfriend would have asked, what is the difference between Venom and Black Widow? What is the difference between, Venom and, Shang-Chi? Quality? We've not seen the film. We've not seen the film yet, so I don't know. But you're not impressed. You don't seem like to be impressed, or you don't even want to be talking about it.
I think one of the biggest things that people are going to have issue with in this, and certainly one of the issues that I have the most with it, is the characterization of the character Venom, where they have made him almost like, do you know who he reminds me of? The abominable snowman in Monsters Inc. That's what I picture him like. He's got he's like a big monster. He's got the big voice, but he's like a gullible. It's so cartoonish and weird and childish in so many ways that it doesn't fit visually, of course, what you're seeing, or the tone of the movie, which is very dark. The humor is not landing on any front. Tom Hardy is not pulling off any sort of humor here whatsoever. The voice for Venom, I don't know if it's him that's doing the voice or if there's someone else doing the voice. But it doesn't suit, because it sounds like a Pixar character. It reminds me of someone I seen say online, said it reminds them of the Honey Monster from Sugar Puffs. If you remember like any Honey Monster ads from years and years ago, that's kind of what he reminds me of too. And I think it's a very appropriate sort of description of him. And the same with the Abominable Snowman. It's so tonally all over the place that it doesn't feel like anything is coherent or makes sense in it. It's very dark looking. It's very violent looking. It's very graphic looking. Where we see kind of the snippets of the transformation into Carnage looks very horrific. Venom is over here murdering people. Like, if you remember at the end of the first movie, he murders someone in front of the shopkeeper, who's now just like a friend as well.
Yeah.
He ate a man in front of her. And yet it's all like these weird jokes, and he's hungry all the time, and I think he says catsup instead of ketchup as well. He like says it sort of funny, like, oh, isn't that so cute? And it's like, none of this feels coherent or makes sense. It feels so disjointed and weird, and it's so far away from our expectations of what Venom usually is from the comics or the cartoons, where Eddie Brock is tormented and poisoned essentially in his mind by the symbiote, and it has turned him into an even more horrible person than he already was. And, it amplified that horrible part of him and made him incredibly sinister and evil. And yet in this here, it's like, oh, they're good buddies, and Venom is actually a nice thing, guy, monster, alien, whatever. And they got jokes together, and it's all very, very out of place and very out of touch. And it definitely feels like Sony are like, we have properties and we know that they're popular, so let's try and make as much money from them as we can. And we know that this is tied to Morbius, which has got that dirtbag Jared Leto in it. And that is another one, like, who the fuck cares about Morbius? Bottom rate fucking comic character. I was like, why do we fucking care about Morbius? And it terrifies me that this is technically the same group that have control of Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and that he technically they're alluding to this potentially being in that universe in some fashion. As if you remember from the Morbius trailer, Vulture appears in it. So he does. Michael Keaton's Vulture is there. So it's there's some sort of like crossover with that universe that they're doing. But yet in the background of the Morbius trailer, there is Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man on a poster. Which wouldn't make a lot of sense either, because we've already had Eddie Brock and Venom in a Tobey Maguire in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man 3. So it's like, what are they doing? And this makes so little sense, and it's so worrying that they can have some sort of influence in the two really good Spider-Man movies that have so far released, and potentially try and get their hooks in further down the line. So fuck this movie.
Movie has not been released yet. We've not seen the movie. We've just seen the trailer, and Conor has a very strong opinion about it. Like always, I mean, I'm not surprised by it, but I will always play a devil's advocate, and I will say, who the fuck cares about Eternals? Who read the comic book Eternals? I've not fucking read the comic book Eternals. I don't even know who they are, but here we are, like, oh, Eternal's gonna be big, but then why? And again, completely different take on Venom. Okay, fine, but like, we had completely different takes on our, heroes in Marvel universe, and that's fine. That like, I'm not sure where you stand on Deadpool, because I know some people who hate Deadpool. I know some people who love Deadpool. I'm on in the level like Deadpool as a movie is a really, really entertaining film, especially the first one. But I heard some people, this is like, oh my God, like, how to make a movie, just make so many sex jokes as possible, and just make it as dirty as possible, and then just do it as gory as possible, and do as many references as you can. And people laugh, This might be the similar case, and I know there is, like you're saying, Sony sees the audience. There is an audience who wants to watch Venom. One of my friends has a phone background on his device is from Venom, because he loved that film so much.
Nah, that's nonsense. You're lying to me.
No, I'm being serious, and I saw this and I was like, okay, fine, Venom, like it. So this is one of those. And this is, for me, is going to be one of those entertaining movies if I kind of get through it, if it's not very bad. And I don't think it's going to be very bad. It's got some good people involved in there. Tom Hardy, I don't agree with you. I think he can play, those kind of deadpan moments really well. You got Michelle Williams starring in that film. You got Woody Harrelson. I don't know how much is going to be there. So, hey, why not? I'm up for the ride. Give me a ticket, I'm gonna watch it. But I think you judged it because it's not part of the universe. It's not clear. It's not pure. Kevin Feige wouldn't allow it. You're afraid that this is gonna kill Spider-Man. Let's be open-minded. That's my take on that.
Look, it's not those things necessarily, but you mentioned Deadpool, and I think Deadpool's fine. I didn't love Deadpool. I thought it was pretty good and fun to watch and pretty entertaining. But what I thought Deadpool really understood was what Deadpool was. Like, they were very self-aware about Deadpool and the character and what made him unique and special. And Venom feels like None of those things. It feels like they were like, we have a property and we can make a big movie out of this property with a big budget, and that's fine. And it will make its money. Because the last one, sure as fuck, made its money. It made a fuck ton of money at the cinema, so it did. And again, nobody liked that movie. That movie was terrible. That movie made me dislike Riz Ahmed for a brief period of time just because he was in it. So he did. And he kept saying symbiote instead of symbiote. He kept going symbiote. And I was like, what the fuck are you saying that for? Oh, that movie angered me a lot. So it did. It was a bad movie. And this one looks like they're like, let's just do more of that. More of the bad stuff.
Let's get Conor angry.
Yeah, you know, like that. This feels like it's just not aware of the properties that they have at their disposal and what interesting stories that they could tell. They're like, let's just make a big movie with Tom Hardy and a big CG Venom. Wouldn't that be fun? Yeah,
that will be fun. Absolutely. So this movie is due to come to the cinemas in September 2021. That's enough for news and trailers. Let's jump on to our favorite part, is to discuss films we've watched. Actually, we're going to discuss one movie and a TV show, which I barely remember. So let's maybe start with a film I watched recently. This is an Oscar-winning movie, Best Picture 2021. The Best Director and Best Chloe Zhao, and Best Actress Frances McDormand. This is the third movie from Chloe Zhao, a story of a woman in her 60s after losing everything in the Great Recession, that embarks on a journey through the American West, living as a van-dwelling modern-day nomad.
You are one of those lucky people that can travel anywhere.
Yes, ma'am, I know.
And they sometimes call you nomads.
My mom says that you're homeless. Is that true?
No, I'm not homeless. I'm just houseless. Not the same thing, right?
No.
My husband worked at the USG mine in Empire. I was a substitute teacher.
It is a tough time right now. You may want to consider early retirement.
I need work. I like work.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Welcome to Badlands Spa.
What the nomads are doing is not that different than what the pioneers did.
Gotta make the hole bigger.
I think Fern's part of an American tradition.
Oh, he's gonna come right through the glass.
My dad used to say, what's remembered lives. I maybe spent too much of my life just remembering.
So Chloe Zhao has made films like that film, like Nomadland, before. Her first film is Songs My Brothers Taught Me, is set in the Native American community in like a very specific town. That is pretty much everyone. There's non-actors. Like, it feels like a documentary. Second film is called The Rider. It's about this young fellow who wants to. He builds his career when it comes to riding horses and bulls. And the third film is about this kind of community of middle-aged people who don't have money, don't have health insurance, and travel to America. And it feels like Chloe Zhao has been doing the same film all over again. So if you've not seen her previous films, this feels like it. And so you've got obviously Frances McDormand here, David Strathairn, and the rest of them are like just people who really are nomads. And it feels like Chloe Zhao is really good in threading this very thin line, just going this very thin path between documentary and a fiction, because you like watching real people here, but there's also a story that's kind of made up. It feels like a documentary, but then you have those moments when it's like poetic and it's like makes you think. There is no action in this film. Like there is like no big plot. The biggest moment that something happens when the man lifts a box. That's the biggest moment of the movie, right? And then this film leaves you, I mean, I'm talking about myself, but left me full of emotions, full of thoughts, left me wondering, left me thinking. And I watched it second time because I wanted to be fresh when we talk about it, because I watched this movie in Venice, and when this movie won Venice, I was like not surprised, because it was the best movie that was in that film festival. And then they started talking, this is going to be an Oscar nomination, 100%. Whether Chloe Zhao is going to win, who knows, but definitely is a deserving movie. And when it won, I was like, wow, okay, so this movie lasted for 6 months. The whole talk about it since it was premiered is still there. It's still ongoing, and this says something for me, that this movie resonated with so many people, and it was awarded. But I have to say, I have to warn people that this is not a film that you might expect hearing, Frances McDormand, like, American film, like modern film. It is not a film that you would normally see winning an Oscar. I don't know. I might be wrong. This is more a movie that wins a film festival, and then it's talked about and it's like highly praised and regarded. And then this film won a film festival, won an Oscar. And I'm super interesting to hear your opinion about it. Like, what were your thoughts? What were you expecting? Because you were talking so much about like Chloe Zhao, the film, the Eternals, and everything before even seeing Nomadland, before watching a single minute of her movie. And what were your expectations, and what did you get, Conor? And we can go into a little bit deeper into like specific moments of the film as well if you want. But this is what kind of like I was wondering when I was watching this film.
That's a good question too about expectations, because I definitely bought into the excitement and the hype that the kind of Oscar season or award season in general kind of brings. Hearing from you back sort of like at festival season time as well, and that initial buzz starting to come out of it, and then hearing that Chloe's actually doing a Marvel movie. It's like, okay, that's interesting. That's something I like, and it's something I have a lot of investment into. So it's obviously something I'm really intrigued to see what happens when they're bringing someone who's relatively unknown into this huge franchise and putting them in there and giving them the reins and saying, here you go, like, let's see what you got, let's see what you can come up with. It goes right back to what we were saying at the start of the episode, you've got even the likes of James Gunn or Taika Waititi is a similar premise. It's like, it's like creative people, lots of fantastic ideas, not super well known, but pretty well appreciated amongst their peers. And yet giving them something and saying, all right, well, let's see what you can come up with. And so I was super excited to see that. I didn't necessarily think that it would end up being the Oscar winner, earlier on. But as it drew closer, I kind of eventually, and we started to see the nominations and stuff, I started to think, yeah, it's probably going to be this. I have to say, I think I'm pretty glad that it did win, because I really, really enjoyed it. And I thought it was really lovely. I thought it was a very lovely movie. Expectations-wise, going into it, I had this like, okay, I am very excited because of, all of the buzz and the snippets that I've seen here and there. Never really watched a full trailer, but loved the look of it, even just from stills. I thought it looked beautiful. And I'm a big fan of Frances McDormand as well. So I was like, yeah, I'm on board for this. I definitely was taken aback by how much stillness that this movie has, because when I see Frances McDormand, especially like some fresh in my mind is still Three Billboards, where she's just a totally different person, and I was sort of expecting maybe some of that energy coming into this at some point during this movie, and it never gets there at all. And that took me by surprise, but in a good way. I was really delighted that it wasn't any of the things that I had maybe thought it was going to be. If you had have asked me 3 weeks ago, what do I think this movie is about, or could I describe it, I would have been very, very wrong. And I think I'm glad that I would have been very wrong with what we ended up getting. It is a lovely movie for so many different reasons and so many elements of it. But it's just wonderfully crafted with such an honesty about it. And it bucked so many trends. Like, it didn't have, any explosive scenes. There was no kind of like scary action scene or, oh dear, she's like stuck here and there's someone trying to rob her vehicle or something like that. Nothing like that ever really happens, There was one sequence in it where you see a bunch of ATVs and stuff start to like drive by, kind of out in the desert. These like quad bikes and stuff. And I remember raising an eyebrow thinking, something about this feels weird. Like, is this menacing? Is something bad about to happen here? And I thought, oh, is this going to be a point where the movie shifts and becomes more like that? And then it just doesn't. It just passes on by, and it just keeps on being what it was. And I didn't know either that a lot of the people in it were actual nomads, which again gives it such a great sense of weight to it, in particular, as you're saying, that almost documentary style feeling. But in particular, I believe it's Bob Wells, I think is the name, if I'm not mistaken. The gentleman with the white hair.
Yeah.
Who's like a very sort of famous nomad and anti-capitalist. I didn't know that was him. The name I've heard of before and the book I've heard of before, but I didn't know it was him. And I never picked up on it afterwards until I went and read afterwards. And we can talk about that in a little bit when we actually kind of dive into it a little bit more. But I was very, very pleased with what this movie ended up being compared to what I would have maybe described it as a month ago or 2 months ago or even 3 weeks ago at this point, So, yeah, I liked it.
I think this film, I first of all, I need to say that super happy that you enjoyed it. Like, this is not a film that if you would come here and say, I was bored, this is not a movie for me, I completely misjudged it. I would say I see it and I respect it. This is not a film that will speak to everyone, but it's a rare kind of film that will have this sort of energy, this kind of like stuff that nothing really happening, but stuff is going on, and you kind of get invited into the world of the people who live in that world, just to watch it, just to be there, not to be like involved in the action, not to be thinking about like, oh, are they gonna jump her? Is she gonna die?
Yeah.
This is not that type of movie, and I love that. And this film being so successful, just being this piece about like the community. There is obviously more in-depth stuff going on, like the character that Frances McDormand plays, Fern, is going through like a grievance. She has lost her husband, and she tries to deal with her life after that loss, and that is a process, and she maybe is not ready to settle. Maybe that nomad life she always had within her, and you try to understand her. And this is so beautiful that this film is not judging, but it's just showing you like a different options, different versions, different people, and where the people are coming from. I was, I had this long discussion with my girlfriend and her sister about this film, and we kind of, exchanged some ideas. One of the things that comes across as the very first thing, this movie is going to be very social and political, right? So it's going to be a critique of the how the USA doesn't work. right now, how people are left behind. And this is a film about this, but this is not mainly about it, right? So this is not like a big political topic. Okay, we see how people are being treated, how all the people being left out and they have to change their life, suddenly do something else. And this is not about the nomads in general, because nomads are not only middle-aged people who take the vans and they start traveling. They also younger people who have jobs like they can work remotely. They decide to do it. They see it as an adventure. There are whole families living like that as well. It's not only in the UK, but also around the world. People just do this nomadic life. And this is not about everyone. This is about like a very specific group of people at the specific time. And you are invited to watch their life. I like how this film plays on the expectations, where, for example, Amazon would be the bad guys of the film, right? They are exploiting people, they are using you. But here they are just one of the employees who give people jobs at some point in time. And thanks to those jobs, they can kind of move on and do other jobs and travel and everything. And it's not all black and white, like there are so many shades of gray in there. I very, very like the whole relationship that Frances McDormand's character Fern builds with David Strathairn's character. So in a normal film, you would probably see them, and this is going to be spoilers, like see them, oh, they should be together, they're going to be so good for each other. He's such a good guy, But this is not this film. This is not about, the satisfaction that, you get from it. You get different kind of satisfaction. And I've been talking for a moment, but I would say a few things about the cinematography on this film. Cinematography on this film is just stunning. And I've not seen so many shots done in a golden hour since Top Gun. I'm not kidding you. I watched Top Gun recently. Top Gun has a shot of setting sun, low on the horizon, golden, glow of this and that. This film has pretty much the same thing. Whenever there's an opportunity to do a like a nice shot, okay, this is golden hour, this is setting sun, this is beautiful clouds. This movie looks incredibly beautiful. This has this poetry that Terrence Malick movies has, but it doesn't have the pretentiousness of Terrence Malick films. So there is no voiceover that tells you something, that explains you, that reads poetry or whatever. This is like real life, like capturing those moments. Like, there's a scene when they Fern and Dave sit in Badlands and they eat salad, like on those deck chairs, and they look on the national park. It's just like pure poetry of like nothing, like simple things. This is a very sad movie, this is a very sad movie, but also beautiful movie. This is a movie that knows what it's doing. This is a movie set in the American tradition of filmmaking. The very final sequence when Fern goes back to the building when she used to live, she opens the door and you have a camera that has the frame. And this is a shot taken from The Searchers, John Ford's The Searchers. And it's not a coincidence, because this is a film about today, people who travel like the pioneers did across this vast country, and they discover it again, after us living in big cities and being stuck in one place, they go and travel again. So this is a homage to Western films, to the whole culture of Western cinema, but also much bigger than that. I love the music by Ludovico Einaudi in this. I think it's such a, it gives you this sweet and bitter taste of that. And, for me, this film works on every level. Sometimes when I watch a film second time after I watched it during the film festival, I'm like, this is not as good as I remember it, But this time, second viewing, absolutely, I not changed my opinion about this film at all. Even so, I just confirmed this is the film that I watched in Venice in 2020 and last year. Conor, sorry, me talking for a long time, but I definitely want to hear more of your thoughts, not only about the scene in with the bucket, but about other stuff as well.
Do you know, I believe that they spent a few days living in a van together, Chloe Zhao and Frances McDormand.
Yeah.
And Frances McDormand talked about like the embarrassment of having to like be comfortable with like shitting in a bucket outside with someone that you've like just kind of met who you're there with on a professional capacity as well. And it's just, I was like, that's Frances McDormand, I know. In regards to the cinematography, I think that it is, I agree, it is just so beautifully filmed, and something about it that's so striking to me, and I pointed it out to Enya when we were watching it, is that they have such a clever and wonderful use of environmental lighting as opposed to stage lighting. And you see this probably most often in the scenes shot inside the van itself, because it's so often lit by just a small singular light. At one point it's a Santa Claus in the background, at another point it's just like a small lantern that she has lit, and that's usually the only thing that's really providing any light to the scene. And it just the way it sort of it helps in the caravan or in the van. It helps to give such a sense of calm and peace. Like, this is her home. This is her home to her. Like, no matter how small it is or how run down it is, it's her own little like safe space. And that singular little light in this tiny little cramped space helps evoke that so much, and it also helps evoke how small the space is, because you're seeing shadows being cast by it, because it's just everything is in there. It's so condensed and cramped in. Her entire life is crammed into this tiny little vehicle. And then the flip side of that is whenever you come outside it, you have these great big expansive sunsets and like high noons and stuff like that, or early mornings, and it all of a sudden it feels like breathable. Everything is open and alive again, and there's possibility in the air, just when you get these sequences. And again, there isn't like any real sense of like studio lighting or false lighting or backlighting or anything like that. It's probably there. It's probably being used so that it's shot well and it looks good, but it's done so minimally. And they're really just letting this big, like, natural light do the talking, or the little lamp in the van do the talking if it needs to. And then to kind of build on top of that is the weather in it is almost like a character in and of itself. The weather and the environment that Fern is in. Like, you start in Amazon, and again, going back to the lighting, it's in a warehouse. It's all blue light. It's that horrible, harsh, cold blue light. And I know you're saying Amazon here kind of painted as like not a good guy or a bad guy necessarily, but the actual, while she's happy there, it's not really ideal what she's doing. Mm-hmm. It's just a thing.
Means to an end.
Yeah, exactly, right? And I think that is, the big blue lights of the factory. And then you get out to the car and out to the van, and you see just how cold she is, and she's trying to wrap herself under multiple blankets, and you get that lovely sequence of the sort of petrol station or gas station, I guess they would call it, owner coming out and kind of offering support of like a local church or something, because like you could freeze to death out here. It's so cold. Like, it's so dangerous what you're doing, and yet she still won't give up living in this little tiny space. But you just get that absolute sense of cold. And then as the seasons progress through the show, you move into the springtime, and then you move into the summer, and they're sitting out on the deck chairs, and they're having that lovely summer's evening, and everything feels comfortable and bright again. It's like secular, right? It's like you feel her making this progression, and then by the end of it, you're coming back, and we're at grey again, and it's all overcast and cloudy, and the drive to, is it Dave? Who's the character? What's his name?
Dave, yeah.
He she mentions about like the roads, and there's a little bit of like pathetic fallacy on the journey there because the weather's a bit rough and the sea's a bit rough around her, and it's like they just use the environment and the weather as almost like this like just pillar throughout the whole thing. Like everything is based on what the environment is telling her, which is so true to someone who must live a nomad life. The weather has got to be absolutely critical to every decision that you make. Whether it's like, how long are we driving for today? How long are we staying for? How much fuel do I need to keep the engine running overnight to keep me warm? Like, the weather has got to be on your mind constantly as a nomad. You and I, we live in our comfortable houses with central heating. Like, you know, we can make, it's something that we're conscious of if we need to go outside. But other than that, we're like, nah, it's fine. You know, it's the weather, you know. But to be someone who lives a nomadic life, you got to be so aware of that. And I felt like they just stapled it into this movie. They just planted it right down there from the very start. You're uncomfortable with how cold she is. You're like, this looks horrible. This looks miserable. I don't know why she's doing this. Why would anybody do this? And then you get into the scenes in the summer and you're like, oh, it's so beautiful. I'd happily live the life like that, you know, because like it's wonderful. And then you get back to the end and all of a sudden it's that sort of like sense of, maybe not. I'd pass on that. So I thought that was just so well crafted the whole way through this movie. It just constantly was aware of the lighting, telling the story, and using the environments around them to really just set everything that you needed to know about where her headspace was at that time. So I don't know if you know much about the story that Bob Wells tells at the end of it. He has the speech at the end, where she finally kind of opens up about her husband, Bo, and how much like he was loved, but he lost his parents at a very young age. So she feels like if she kind of stopped living in the town, or stopped living this life that Bo would be forgotten. And Bob Wells tells a story about his son, and he says he would be 33 on this day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That story is true.
I'm not surprised, you know.
It's a true, and because I remember watching it, and again, I didn't know too much about him, and I couldn't believe his delivery of this story. It was just so heartfelt, and it's cutting back, and it's, you know, to the frame of Francis McDormand. It cuts to the frame of him telling the story, and you can really see the struggle of him telling the story. And apparently, it's not a story he tells very, very often, if ever. He doesn't publicly speak about it all that often. So again, this says a lot about the masterful sort of storytelling of Chloe Zhao here, because could you imagine finding a person who you thought had an amazing story to tell and approaching them and being like, hi, I want to record you telling that story that you never tell? Most people would just say, no, I don't. The reason I don't tell it is because I can't tell it. It's too painful. I don't want to tell it, whatever the reason is. And yet to somehow craft a story of like Hollywood level, where you get them to open up on screen, on camera, knowing that this is going to be maybe one of the hardest things they've ever done, and capture that authenticity is just masterful. Like director, I don't know what the word I'm looking for here. It's not directorship, that's not a word. I don't know what it is, but it's masterful, whatever the hell it is.
You have to build rapport, right, with those people to tell you that story. It's not like you go there and action. You just have to get the trust, you know, they tell you that story. It has to be
months and months and months of really, really getting them on board, and then eventually finally convincing them that it's the right thing to do. And then you sit them down on the day and you got to trust that it's going to happen and they're going to tell it, because they're probably only going to tell that once, you know, like, and like to bank it all. And it's such an incredible sequence because it's so painful for both of them, and you can see how painful it is, but yet how much resolve that they get from it, because, you know, he's talking about, and he says that wonderful line about how nobody ever says goodbye. It's just, I'll see you down the road. And he's like, no matter how long I've done this, whether it's weeks or months or years, I always see the people again. This community of nomads, I see them again. And it brings me so much peace to know that someday I'll see my son again. in some form I will see him again. And it's such a wonderful sort of end point to where she is at, because my timeline is getting a little mixed up here, but she might have just walked away from the potential security of living in the home at Dave's family home or whatever it is. She was presented that and she walks away from it. So to then find this story, because at that point you have to imagine that she's so struggling with giving up on Bo. How can I? Because she says I can't do this because people will forget who Bo is. Mm-hmm. And he's telling her like, it's okay because you'll see him again down the line. You will see him again. And that goes for everyone else who ever knew him as well. Like, they'll all see him again down the line. And it brings her such great resolve. I feel like, I don't think it's that she's ready to quite give up her nomadic life yet, but you could see it brings her a lot of pain, but a lot of peace at the same time. And it's just such absolutely wonderful storytelling. And I think that one thing to sort of finalize on this is that what struck me so much about this movie is that it's a movie called Nomadland, and it's about a nomad, and your idea of a nomad is very often singular. It's a person, and they live on their own, and they operate on their own. But this is such a movie about relationships and community. Like, that's what this is really about. This movie is about relationships with the people that you meet along the way, or the people that you've had to leave behind for whatever the reason is. That relationship, it doesn't necessarily end. You carry it with you. And we see that like even that wonderful sort of sequence in it with her friend who takes ill during it, and she says, like, I'd like to think that, like my friends would stand around a fire and throw stones and tell stories about me, or something to that effect. And that's essentially what how they honor her at the end of it. And it's just this group of people, and it's they get by with the relationships that they build with each other. And you contrast that then to the relationship with her family of when she goes home. And it's one of the most striking sequences in the movie for me, is when she goes home. And this is maybe the biggest part, where it's sort of the anti-US sort of sentiment comes through, where her sister's husband and stuff is there, and they're all talking about the money and flipping properties or whatever, and and she can't fathom it, and she snaps. And then we later discover that she couldn't even sleep on the bed in the guest room. Like, she just wasn't comfortable with any of it. And it's, like, these people who are you and I, they sit around, having their nice meals in their nice house, and they're talking about their money, and yet, she can't deal with it. They are not free. They're all kind of their own prisoners, in their own way. But they're also not bad people either. Mm-hmm. They're just like, they have chosen this other life, and it's consumed clearly with this like pursuit of money, and to her it just doesn't compute. It's, for her, it is like, that's just not how I choose to live. And it's not that they're bad people, but they're definitely painted in a much more negative light than really anybody else that we meet along the way. Like any of the other nomads that we meet, they are all a wonderful group of people, and they're all pleasant and nice. But, she gets back home to her family for a brief period of time, and they're being generous and kind and giving her money that she needs to get her van fixed. But there's just a hint of something there, that they are not nice people to be around compared to the other part.
I don't agree with your interpretation of that. I think this is super interesting that you're seeing that. I'm definitely seeing what you said about them being more interested in, like, money and the property and everything. And this is kind of like to show the contrast of, like, this is not her world. But at any point, okay, the brother-in-law is not, kind of great, but the relationship she has with her sister, and the talk they have outside the house, when she says, like, when you left me, that that was a big hole in our life. When you left me, I needed a sister. And that's a heartbreaking moment, because she realized she's done something that influenced her sister and younger sister, older sister, how the relationship is. I don't know, but I can imagine her living there, like getting along with a sister, maybe just avoiding her husband a little bit more, but she doesn't want to. That's her life. And these people are not bad people, but these are not her people. That's the only difference. And the one thing that Chloe Zhao said during the Oscars was like, people at birth are inherently good. And you can see that, like, people are good, but sometimes those people are not your people, and you keep on looking for your people. What is your life? But I love it in her films that she tries to show people in, why maybe someone is like that. Why Fern is, snappy with Dave. She should be happy with him. This is not that easy, like, why she doesn't want to live with that super nice family in this super nice house in this, super nice quiet neighborhood. Yeah, but this is not her. And try to understand that. Very interesting discussion, I think, Conor.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I guess for me, I think that what I was picking up on, it was that there's a lot of this idea of the nomads, because of the time that it's set, and it's really set about that sort of post 2008 economic crash, and loads of people lost everything, and we see how some of these people, like, can't afford, like, all of a sudden they're realizing they didn't have a pension. They're 55, 60 years old, and they have nothing left anymore to live the rest of their lives, so they turn to this nomad life. And so much of this movie sort of is about that point of, like, the collapse of the middle class because of aspirations of having more at the time in the economy as it collapsed. Like, that was that middle class that just decimated. Yet what the wealthy continue to be okay, the super wealthy, and we see it in them, the brother-in-law and whoever the other person is, having that discussion about purchasing houses and flipping houses or whatever it is. And it's like, oh, you're part of that, like, extra wealthy group. You're, like, above the middle class even. You were up enough that you just completely avoided any trouble. Maybe you took a small hit, but you're not too worried about it. Whereas all of these people over here were previously, like, lived comfortable lives. Maybe they had greed and wanted more and end up losing it all. And that's just what I really picked up in that sequence, was that there's this kind of group, and they're all okay. Financially, they all survived. They all maybe even gained from it, as they kind of allude to. And yet all of these other people are living out of their cars and living out of their trailers, and because they just were decimated financially. And, you hear Joe Biden talk about this at the minute. If you pay attention to any of the things he says, he keeps talking about rebuilding the middle class, because it was just wiped out at that point. And that is something that just was kind of looming over this movie. I don't think, again, that it necessarily painted them as bad people. It just, there was some sort of sense there's that, like, oh, there's this group of wealthy people, and they actually gained from it. And then you've all of these other people who were just totally destroyed financially by it and have had to turn to this nomad life. But in that life, they've also found peace and joy and solace in the middle of it all. So, fuck the rich. That's what I'm saying. Burn them all.
Socialist Conor Boyle is here.
It's a super movie, and just very just to go back to what you said at the very start about the documentary style filming. If you go back and watch any of the 7 seconds of Eternals, you'll notice that there is a documentary crew following one of the characters in the movie. So there is.
Okay.
Yeah, there's like a in movie documentary crew following. I'm blanking on his name.
Kamal Nanjiani.
Yes, thank you. Kamal's character seems to be some sort of, like, superstar, and he has like a documentary crew that's filming him. So I'm wondering, like, will we get sequences in Eternals that are shot from their perspective, maybe with him being interviewed and things like that?
Yeah, sounds interesting. Conor, Nomadland is available on Disney Plus, or I should say, all our listeners, if you've not seen this film, you have my recommendation, you have Conor's recommendation. It seems like it. Go with an open heart, go with an open mind, and enjoy this film. It might not be for everyone, but we definitely say, people, please watch this film. On Letterboxd, I gave this film, when it came out, when I first saw it, I gave it 5 stars. So what's your rating?
I think I give it 4.5. I really enjoyed it, but there's also just an element of it where I was like, yeah, I would find it hard to fully recommend it to people, and I also haven't thought about it an awful lot since. Like, this is probably the most that I've thought about it since watching it. And again, that's not taking away from it all. I think it's exceptional, but it's just a lovely small story, very contained, and it's just beautifully crafted and beautifully put together and so thoughtful. So I think I give it 4.5 at the time.
Now we're in a pickle, and we have to do some maths. And now you're probably gonna say that you gave me half a star towards Palm Springs. Now I have to give the half a star away. So I think we're gonna stand on 4.5 for our account.
Yeah, I think it's a fair score. As I think it's like a exception.
Okay.
No, do you know what? Let's not. Let's go with 5, but we're not giving it a heart, which is, again, we have a heart each to give, and neither of us are willing to give it the heart. Oh,
maybe I was, but now I'm not, because you bullied me.
Yeah, I said let's go.
Work conditions in this podcast are horrible. Conor is bullying me all the time. He's like not giving you this, but now he gave me. Okay, so we're giving it 5 stars on Letterboxd. Our Letterboxd account you can find very easy, just on Letterboxd. If you are there, just type in the Blockbusters and you'll find us. Or just follow one of our links on our website, like theblockbusters.net, on our Twitter account. You will find the links there. I love Blockbusters. I was saying that many times, but if you're looking for recommendations and see what other people are watching, what people are talking about, people who love movies, Letterboxd is for you. It is the only social network I use. And that's it.
How wonderful was it, and also sort of strange, to sit down in front of a movie in your home, albeit in your home, and get what is now the Searchlight Pictures introduction. Did this strike you as strange, or did you pick up on this?
I think I picked up on this when I watched it for the first time in the theater. So that
I remember I sat down and I booted it up on Disney Plus, and it opened with that what was formerly like the big Fox intro that we all kind of know and love, especially if you're a Star Wars fan. It's kind of like ingrained into you in many ways. And for some reason, it felt like the most cinematic thing that I had done this year, for sure, to sit down in front of something and have it suddenly be like, this huge big like orchestral score that you're familiar with and haven't seen in a long time. And I just thought that was nice. Let's talk about Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, so that was Nomadland. Let's talk about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Bam, bam, bam.
It feels like it belongs to someone else. That shield represents a lot of things to a lot of people. Symbols are nothing without the women and men that give them meaning.
We need someone to inspire us again.
The world's more complicated now.
We're never gonna stop. This world is ours. There's no going back.
It doesn't have to be a war.
It already is.
So we have, so the series concluded. So the series, I would say series 1, apparently there's going to be more, right?
Potentially, yeah.
Potentially.
Well,
I think there's potential, but who knows what's going to happen. There's nothing confirmed. But that series was 6 episodes. And we've watched 3 at the beginning. We reviewed them in one of the previous episodes. And then 3 further concluded the story. So fair warning to anyone who's not watched that TV show, maybe wants to watch it. We're gonna do some spoilers.
Mm-hmm.
But before we do the spoilers, let's do a very, very quick, brief impression of those 3 episodes. Did you love it? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Are you meh? And then we're gonna dive into spoilers.
I think number 4 and number 5 were both excellent. So number 4 was The Whole World Is Watching, which had a few good sequences, which we'll talk about, that shifted my opinion on Zemo and John Walker. Because I remember previously on our last sort of discussion about this, when we finished on episode 3, I had some reservations about both of them and what was kind of happening and where they were taking them. And I think episode 4 did a fantastic job at dealing with that. Number 5, an episode named Truth, was my favorite episode in the series, for, again, a number of reasons, which we'll talk about. But it was probably the strongest episode. And then episode 6 was One World, One People, which was the season finale. And it was good, but I think, again, they sort of... When we watched WandaVision, we talked about it was quite hard for them to reach what the expectations had been set up to be. Which, by the way, if you didn't catch it, Kevin Feige did confirm recently that Doctor Strange was supposed to be in WandaVision, and they backed out of it because they didn't want to overshadow Wanda's story with like a bigger character coming into it. So again, interesting, and it also led to rewrites of Doctor Strange as well. There's a next movie. So I thought that was interesting. This felt like it just didn't stick the landing because of potential maybe rewrites and some weird sort of story things that had to happen, trying to tie up maybe 1 or 2 threads that maybe could have went unanswered for the time being, as opposed to needing a resolution on it. Did we really need to find out who the power broker was in this series right now? No, not really. I don't think it really added very much to it. If anything, it just made it kind of go, oh, okay. Not a bad episode, and very cinematic and action-packed and fun to watch from that point of view. But I also felt that it undid some of the things that they had set up with John Walker in the 2 previous episodes, which again felt like something maybe had to get scrapped and changed in the writing process, because there were some things that definitely were meant to have, some storylines that were meant to have kind of played out that got changed, not only because filming got halted with COVID, but also because COVID itself almost was related to one of the plot lines that they were maybe playing with initially, in terms of like a pandemic and things like that. Thematically, I think overall, though, the show had some really, really incredible themes, and some ones that I am so impressed that they actually dipped their toe into in some cases, and in some cases actually just challenged head on. And I thought that was really, really great for a show of this caliber with an audience as big as this, from a studio that could very easily say, for business reasons, that's not something we're going to really talk about all that much. What did you think about these 3?
I think I need to pick up on what you said in the last sentence. I agree. Like they kind of tackled some very interesting topics that were never tackled in the film or the TV show of that caliber. Like we're talking about racism, right? And I respect that absolutely. I agree. Episode 4 and episode 5, especially what happens at the end of episode 4 towards the episode 5, was something I was like, wow, okay, this is the show I wanted to watch. But There's a big but. I think like a lot of that show feels like a mediocre Marvel film that from 8 years ago. It doesn't feel like it's breaking anything in terms of like this kind of how the storytelling is put through. I'm not talking about the things that it tackles in terms of the racism and so on, but more so like how the story develops. Also the some good action scenes, but there is kind of like dips in the middle there. I like my girlfriend said that the acting in this TV show is kind of uneven. You can have Daniel Bruhl enjoying the show. You have the actor who plays the new Captain America, slipped my mind, Wyatt Russell, being fantastic.
Yeah.
And you have Sebastian Stan like having those couple of those scenes when like
we'll
emotions like wow. And then on the other hand, Anthony Mackie not being like, I don't think he's great in the role. I agree with like my girlfriend pointing out. He's very, very stiff, and he's like, he's trying, but he's not there. So, overall, this is not a show that I will probably go back to. As much as I wanted to rewatch WandaVision at some point, I don't think I want to rewatch that. And one thing I said to you, and there's one other thing I will leave to our like spoilers. But when we discussed at the very beginning, where the show starts and when it ends, it is kind of like, okay, we've kind of ended the way it sort of started before the show even started. But we have this development of things that happen. So overall, yeah, could live without it. Not essential viewing for me. So let's do spoilers, because there is so many things to tackle. And if you've not watched the show on Disney Plus, please watch it and come back to our discussion. If you've seen it, stay with us, because we definitely want to start with the end of episode 4, Conor, when the whole world is watching.
Well, actually, I think at the start of episode 4, actually.
Remind me, because I don't remember what happened there.
I believe it's the start of episode 4 where we get Bucky in Wakanda.
Oh, yeah, that scene.
And it is an incredible sequence where we're seeing Ayo read the like Winter Soldier book to him that was used in the Winter Soldier movie to kind of manipulate him. Zemo used it to kind of trigger the Winter Soldier out of Bucky, and she's reading it to him now, but after having, I guess, sort of like worked with him to fight it, and we see him not react for the first time. And Sebastian Stan's acting here is just absolutely remarkable. Like the fear and the pain in his eyes, and the relief that then leads to when he discovers that he was able to control it and he's become the White Wolf is just so good. And it's like this is the sort of sequences why you come to these shows. I think this is very much okay, I want more. I want to know more about Bucky and the Winter Soldier. I want to know more about what happened while he was at Wakanda. What's the story there a little bit more. I don't necessarily need an episode of him getting up to stuff in Wakanda, but this sequence of like watching him fight this very deep and personal battle whenever we know how much the trauma that has brought him from earlier on in the show and also the previous movies. It was just a brilliant sequence. There's also another sequence in this episode. It happens about midway through, and I thought it was incredibly powerful because this is where they flip the script on what I was talking about with John Walker prior, which was, John Walker seemed like he was a little bit in over his head, and then they started to make him go really bad really quick, and it felt like he was, totally freaking out and that maybe he was always the bad guy all along. And then he has this sequence in a sort of, I guess, like a cafe or a shopping mall or something where he's talking to Hoskins. And they talk about their previous Medal of Honor badges. And he doesn't tell him yet that he managed to pick up one of the stray serums, as Zemo had smashed all of the serums in the scene prior, which, again...
He missed one. He missed one,
before he was hit with the shield and knocked unconscious and probably brain damage. I kind of have to imagine being hit with that shield on the head, being just a normal human being. But, he missed one, and... Walker never says, I've got a thing of the serum, what should I do? But he asks Hoskins, like, if you had it, would you take it? And Hoskins says, absolutely. Because, look at what we had to do to save some people on that day. And they never really allude to what specifically that event was. And I think that works well. We don't really need to see it, but it just sounds like they had to give an awful lot of themselves to achieve something that day. And he kind of puts to him, imagine what we would have been able to achieve that day and if we had have had super soldier serum. And that kind of makes him reflect. And we're seeing him at this point. He's started to get stubble. He looks a little bit more worn and exhausted than he had previously been. We had started to see him really kind of... we had an excellent fight scene, I think, in this one. No, it's not. It's in episode 5, I think, where he fights the Dora Milaje. But yeah, they have this sequence anyway where they have this discussion, and it just puts so much perspective onto John Walker all of a sudden, and you see him now as empathetic. In the space of one scene, he went from being someone you're like, I don't know, he seems kind of just two-dimensional bad guy, wants to impress the military, wants to get more Medal of Honors, to, oh no, he's really struggling with the weight of becoming Captain America. He wants to do the right thing, and he believes that taking the serum will enable him to do the right thing. It'll enable him to overcome that stress of not being Steve Rogers. He needs to take the serum perhaps to be the hero that he wants to be and that he knows that he can be. And Hoskins says to him, but it only brings out the, it enhances what is already there. And as that leads to it then, by the end of the episode, it only enhances that rage and violence and that side of him that just feels like he's a failure and he's a fraud and he's not Steve Rogers. Hoskins gets killed in a horrific way, and that's the kind of trigger point. And then we get that incredible scene at the end where he murders a man in cold blood in the middle of a public square who previously had just said that he was a big admirer of Captain America, and then minutes later gets bashed to death with his shield, which is just horrific.
And you see, this is the shot when you towards the end, you see he's holding the shield, and the shield is like soaking with blood. Yeah. And everyone is watching. The whole world is watching. So I was such a powerful end of the episode. And when we land in the next episode, it's like he's running away and he's being chased by the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And there's a big fight they have. And you feel like, okay, this is the end of Walker, right? So they're just gonna probably destroy him. But this fight is super interesting. It looks well. You have moments there when Walker destroys the wings of Falcon, and you're like, oh, that's the end of Falcon essentially. What's gonna happen next? But Bucky or Winter Soldier actually overwhelms him, and they sort of kick him out, take the shield, and off they go. So very kind of rewarding that fight. I was you just waiting for the whole week to see what's gonna happen, and you get that. I think if we are talking about Walker, we can maybe just kind of track what sort of happens to him, because he's being charged later on, he's by the Senate, right? By one of the senators that he essentially kind of misused his powers and he destroyed the name of Captain America. He's no longer Captain America. And then he's being picked up. So we have the dog barking in the background.
Yeah, I know. You know what? Shut up! Shut up!
We have one of the characters appearing in there. So this is Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, right? And
Yeah,
very, very cheeky appearance there by what's the name of the actress? Just Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Yeah, fantastic actress, and she's
I
like.
love her.
She appears for 5 minutes total, and she steals every fucking scene.
Yeah, she's great.
And towards the end, so I'm just let's kind of follow this arc, because then very interestingly, what happens to Walker is he doesn't take no for an answer. He makes his own shield, and that was like he just exactly does the Tony Stark. He puts one of his medals there just to remind him about his fallen friend, and he goes back to battle. And this is one of the annoying things that I kind of like. I didn't buy from this series. So this series is trying to paint Walker as a villain, but towards the end, like nothing happened. Bucky and Walker are friends after the final thing. I was just like, and they just go and get a beer and hit the bars, like what? This is like I don't get. This was super weak in terms of like writing. I did love what they done to Walker, so they kind of turning him into a new hero in the future. He's gonna become like someone called U.S. Agent. Probably if you're a Marvel fan, you know what's gonna happen. But overall, I don't think this arc with the actors acting fantastically in there, I don't think this was written well. But what do you think about like the whole kind of ending when Bucky and Walker just go out like hand in hand almost?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like he walks out and he quotes Abraham Lincoln or something. That's very weird. I think this was a very strange decision because they had done such a great job of setting him up almost tracking to an extent Captain America's story through his movies to Civil War, how Civil War ends and leading into the start of Infinity War. Captain America has turned his back on the US government. He's turned his back on Thunderbolt Ross, if you remember. He's the one who owns the raft that we see Zemo in and we've seen in Civil War, where Steve Rogers shows up at the very end. He's turned his back on America in many ways, and it's in a similar vein to what we see Walker going through. He has that like disciplinary hearing. And he has that great sequence where, again, he almost loses it. And that's the key difference between him and... This is the difference between him and Steve, right? Is that he can't kind of keep it in check. He can't keep himself controlled. He has that like breakdown or that like aggressive sort of explosion that we see in the hearing with him where he says like, I am what you made me. You built me to be this, and now you can't deal with it. You don't know what to do with it. And everything that I've done is what you've wanted to do. And Steve was very much the same in a lot of ways, but he was able to just keep it in check. He was able to have more decorum and sort of a sense of self and a sense of belief, whereas Walker is really struggling with that element of who is he and what is his place here, because he's been trained as this machine, and yet they don't want him to be this machine unless they need him to be this machine, and even then, it's only really if it's okay with what they want it to do publicly facing. So yeah, it's a bit of a bummer to see then that he turns around at the end and he's like in the middle of all these cops and he's there with Bucky and they've had this they just beat the shit out of each other the last time we seen them. They broke his arm to get the shield off him the last time we seen him, and yet he's like, oh, okay, sure, let's walk off into the sunset together. And it's like,
Yeah.
it feels weird. It feels like he should have showed up, done what he needed to, and then just been like, peace out. I'm not part of this. I don't trust any of you. I don't like any of you. I'm out of here. I'm on my own.
Yeah, that would be more interesting to see like him engaging. He's still engaging. He's still trying to do good,
Yeah.
but he's like, I'm not gonna like be and high five you, like he almost does. So
Yeah.
I like when like what happened to the character, like his transformation. I just don't like what this script kind of made him do,
I agree.
and it was completely undeserved. Conor, next thing I wanted to ask you is Zemo, because at episode 4 we see that the Wakandians have found Zemo, and there's a big kind of like stumble in the apartment when Zemo kind of gets out. There's a very impressive fight with the steel and everything, but Zemo then kind of after he destroys those portions of the serum, he gets to Sokovia, and that's where they find him, right? That this is where we essentially end Zemo. He was taken by Sokovians, but it was interesting to kind of like see this. He is in front of this monument when it commemorates people of Sokovia that were killed during Age of Ultron, as I remember rightly, and then he almost forces Bucky to kill him to kind of prove to him that he hasn't changed, but Bucky has changed. It's a very interesting sequence, but overall, I feel like I wanted to see more Zemo dancing in a disco and just doing his moves. And I think we're gonna see him more because there is the whole kind of setup for US Agent and Zemo working together in the future. What do you think about Zemo's arc?
I think it would be strange for him to work with US Agent because his whole thing is about super soldier serum. Yeah, I couldn't get the words out there. He's very anti super soldier serum and people taking the super soldier serum, and yet they're going to now potentially partner him up with someone who took it for their own gain, pretty much, to be this thing, despite him sort of reeling against that the whole time, going to the fact that he's destroying whatever small amount of vials of this stuff remain. So that will be interesting. It'll be fun if they maybe approach it from a point of view where they just don't like each other and they don't get on more than even he did with Falcon and Bucky. Perhaps that he has a real trouble working with John Walker and US Agent because he fundamentally disagrees with it, but maybe he finds himself in a situation where he has to or can't or something like that. I don't know.
Was really cool to see Wakandians, right?
Oh my god, so cool! Because you hear that little like the drums from Black Panther come in at the end of the episode, and then you get to see you meet Ao, and then in episode 5 we have that fight where, as you mentioned, with the Dora Milaje. Which is another huge catalyst, or maybe it is in episode 4. I can't remember now. It's been a few weeks to see it, but Walker gets his ass beat in, and it's a big reason why. Because he says like they weren't even super soldiers. Yeah, they beat the shit out of him, and he just feels like absolute shit at that point. So yeah, it's got to be episode 4 because it's 4 he takes it. So yeah, that was a great sequence. It was really really fun to watch. And
one other thing I wanted to ask you, we got Flag Smashers, right? So the whole arc of Flag Smashers being kind of taken down bit by bit by both Captain America and then by Falcon and Winter Soldier, and the kind of ending as well. I kind of feel like this is where we were going, to kind of redeem what they've done, despite they've done bad and tried to kill a lot of people. I don't feel like it was deserved to that arc, as especially for Carly. It was like I don't know. It just doesn't feel earned. Doesn't feel honest.
I agree, and we spoke about this in our previous episode as well, where I just didn't really buy into what it was that they were doing. And I really love the concept of and how the MCU seemingly going forward, both with WandaVision, with this, and what looks like with Loki as well, of using the events of Endgame and Infinity War and the snap or the blip, to how it has fundamentally changed everything in the world. And all of these stories are threaded from that point. Because how could they not be? It's such a huge, significant issue and thing to deal with. So I love the point that they're getting at here of them being almost again like nomads. These are people who are without borders, and they're now being kicked back out. And just at a sort of time when we're seeing this kind of globally with like immigration and countries trying to prevent immigrants, whether it be through fucking stupid walls or sending boats out to sea to stop them coming in on rafts. It's such again an interesting topic to dive into when you're adding in the elements of this big cosmic event and superpowers and stuff like that. It's an interesting way and fun way to try and tell that story and to educate people about the points of view of someone who is seeking immigration or asylum somewhere, right? And I just felt that they never really got away from them just kind of coming across like bad people. We never really got enough of them being like tormented, chased, hunted, doing good things. Like nothing really. There was a few bits here and there with the school and stuff like that. And again, there appeared to be something in the line. Maybe there was some sort of virus and they were trying to steal vaccines or something. That might have been a plot line, because there was a mention of vaccines earlier on in the season when we first meet them. But it just never got there. And I feel like by the end of it with Carly, that she was just sort of bad and doing bad things, and we didn't really buy into what was motivating her to do it. And then surrounding her was a bunch of like Abercrombie models, like it was like all these like cool, like beautiful young people, and we're like, well, we'll just like live and want to be free, man, and it's like, yeah, cool, like I get it, and I'm really interested in hearing about that, but you're not really telling me much more about it, and you're certainly not showing me anything more about it. And then in contrast to that, you have their conversations then in the show with one of its biggest things about race. And I think it's what this show absolutely nailed and did so well. Because episode 5 is my favorite episode, and it's the episode called Truth, and it's where Bucky finally confronts Isaiah Bradley. And we get this incredible story about how he was given the super soldier serum, and the country then turned their back on him. And they imprisoned him, and it was only a nurse who took pity on him that faked his death record. So essentially, he is a dead man living, right? He is just hiding out as someone dead or presumed dead. Anyway, just because his country didn't want the prospect of a black superhero or a black Captain America. And it's so much with what Sam is struggling with. And I really love that they approached it too from the point of where he tells Sam, like, how could any like black man feel like they have any sort of like sense of value by picking up this shield and becoming Captain America? That's his point of view on it. He's like, this is disgusting. Why would anybody do that? It's horrible. They're a horrible people. Why would you give your life to them? And that's a point of view that I often take, personally speaking, when I think of like why people sign up to a military, to be part of like a military, because I'm pretty much like anti-military. So when I see it, I'm like, well, why would you want to do that? Like, why would you want to sign up to be part of your government's military? And to add then, but when you add the complexities in that about of race and what they have historically done to black people, to then on the next episode where you have Sam say, no, though, I felt like I had to stand up and represent. How could there ever be anything more? How could we ever strive to be anything more if I didn't pick up that shield and be more at the same time? And I thought that was such a brilliant way to add turmoil to Sam and what he was trying to figure out here, where he's the struggle that he's going through is that he's saying, I don't want to do it. I don't feel like it should be me. And then you have Isaiah saying, no, fuck that. I wouldn't be doing that if I was you. Look at how they treated me. I had to pretend that I'm dead living here for all these years. Just so that I could, just so that I could get out of prison that they put me in. To take all that on board and then to still come around with, no, like I need to be better. I need to be a representative and representation of what I want to see. That kind of like age-old saying of like, be the change you want to see in the world. Like Sam is trying to embody that. And there's one small point on that, just to sort of wrap up, that I thought was really, really good. Was we have this brilliant moment at the end of episode 5 where Sam and Bucky they're like playing catch with the shield and they're like bouncing it off trees. It's very good. But Bucky apologizes and says, neither Steve nor I, when we talked about it, ever thought about the implications of what it would be like for a black man to become Captain America and pick up the shield. It just wasn't even on our radar. And I thought that was a very small line, but it's, again, so telling to the good storytelling that's within this of, from their point of privilege through their lives, like Steve and all that Steve represented of such a good person that we've seen time and time and time again in all of his movies. Like Steve person was like, this is the, like epitome of a good person. He's still never quite seen it from Sam's point of view as a black man in America, and neither did Bucky. And I thought that was just such a wonderful little bit of storytelling where he apologizes and says, like, I'm sorry, we never seen it like that. And I thought that was just a masterful little moment in there, to kind of really tie a knot in the story that Sam was kind of going through.
Yeah, I love this. This was super complicated, and also like it's not a simple answer, right? There is no easy thing to just say, hey, you're a black man, just pick up the shield, be Captain America, when probably half of the people don't want to see you as a Captain America. It's a brave decision, and this is the best part of that show. However, for me, it was destroyed in the last episode when we see new Captain America's costume. And I thought to myself, this is ugly. And I don't know what's going on, whether this is a decision that Marvel is taking right now. They are kind of like more open to show how crazy superhero costumes can be. This kind of was the first thing we saw was in WandaVision, when Wanda's kind of changing her appearance into more the appearance we know from a comic book, rather than being like a Scarlet Witch. Then we see Baron Zemo essentially wearing almost a furry collar on his coat, and even putting the mask as he does in the comic book. And now we see Captain America, and he's just like very retro-futuristic thing, like kind of white elements there. It's almost flashy. It's almost like from the 80s. Like I can imagine Eddie Murphy in Beverly Hills Cop wearing this sort of thing and saying, "This is
a little
the coolest thing ever."
Bring the shoulder pads and stuff.
I don't know.
I
found
they do have
really
the kind
ugly.
of cowl on there, which is a little odd looking, I think. But I didn't have too much trouble with it. I thought it was pretty cool, and I thought it was cool the way like the shield sat on the back of it and stuff. And I liked the colors, but yeah, it needed a little bit more refining. And I reckon they have announced that we're going to get a Captain America 4 now, and it's going to be Sam Wilson as Captain America. Amazing. Again, going back to that idea of like the story that this is telling about a black man becoming Captain America in the US and all these racial tensions that we're seeing, and yet in the real world we're kind of getting that at the same time. We're like, we've all this like racial tension in the US, and yet we're getting the Captain America movie where the black person is playing Captain America, and it's kind of wild and cool that that's happening. But I reckon by the time we get to it, you might see that costume refined down a little bit more with a bit more budget behind it, you know, a bit more time to actually improve it slightly. I think we'll see changes coming to it. My biggest letdown, I think, over in the entire show is you see the end of it. It's cool. It changes from Falcon and Winter Soldier, the show titles, to Captain America and the Winter Soldier, and I thought that was a little bit of a shame because Bucky had such a wonderful story in this that it wasn't really. It was sort of played second fiddle, and that is kind of highlighted by the fact that it didn't change the name from the Winter Soldier. Like, it didn't change to Captain America and the White Wolf, for example, right? So even though at the end, and he has that brilliant scene at the end where he finally admits that he is the Winter Soldier and that he was the Winter Soldier and that he killed this man's son.
That was a very powerful scene.
More brilliant acting. Yeah, you can see the fear of God in him whenever he's looking at him. But he's ready to do it now, and that was set up by the fact that earlier on in the season he didn't shoot Zemo. He walked away from it. He's saying, "I'm not this person anymore." Yet the show didn't want to actually kind of take that away from him. It felt like the show wasn't ready to stop calling him the Winter Soldier yet because they hadn't really given him enough time to do it. So yeah, I thought that was probably one of the areas of the show that I was like, I wish we had have got a little bit more of Bucky. I think the scene where that truly sort of happens is in the fight that you mentioned earlier on at the start of episode 5, where they're fighting over the shield, and earlier on in the season he said we'll just take the shield, and they eventually does take the shield, and instead of like helping Sam up or anything like that, he throws the shield down to him and walks out of the room. But the way that it's framed, if you go back and watch it, he's standing there and Sam's on the ground and John's on the ground, and it's in this old abandoned warehouse, but there's a window at the back, and the window is letting a big beam of light through, and it's beaming over Bucky. And it's almost that moment where he's like, the Winter Soldier is like leaving him at this point. He is no longer the Winter Soldier. He has given up on it, and he is now elevated to something else, whatever that is. And there's also a nice little moment where he wakes up on the couch and he sees the kids playing with it, and it's again a little reminder of like normality and reality and what the shield means to other people and stuff like that, and what superheroes mean to other people, maybe what can lie ahead for him in the future as like 100-year-old man who's murdered thousands of people.
I like the ending, you know, like the ending when Sam takes Isaiah and his son.
Wonderful. Great.
It's just like there's not much to say, but like it's just like beautiful, and it's a great ending. We need to mention one thing that I kind of like, I was 100% sure the moment this happened in episode 3. So Sharon Carter came back as a fugitive living on this Madripoor island, and there is apparently this shadow figure called Power Broker, and Power Broker is behind everything. Surprise, surprise, Power Broker is Sharon Carter. My God, I was so not surprised at all. And I think this is a dump squid for me. Like, kind of like was there all the time. On the other hand, it was like it's not true to her character. They try to make it complicated, so maybe it's not her at all. Maybe it's actually.
I don't think it's her. I think it's a red herring they're throwing us there.
And it's like, because Marvel loves doing that sort of thing, and you know, they killed so many people before. You know, you remember in Captain Marvel, we had Samuel L. Jackson's character all the time, and turns out not to be him, but someone else pretending to be him. So, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if that's such similar thing is gonna happen in the future. But again, for me, Dumb Squid, they try to cram too many things in there.
100%.
Just leave who that is like behind, and maybe just work through it to more deserved ending. So yeah, I think we've discussed pretty much everything except for every other scene, because we've discussed half of it.
Yeah, no,
but,
I think we've.
But I think like Conor overall, I feel like I liked more talking about it with you than watching this as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like positive takes for me is watching a series that lands on a streaming service or somewhere on a weekly basis, and you kind of look forward to that moment when this drops and you can watch it, and then you can sit down and discuss it. I kind of hate when, I try to avoid social media as I can, but then you by a mistake open Twitter and then you have a reveal that Sharon Carter is a power broker without wanting to, and that drives me nuts a little bit. But overall, I think good entertainment, not high flying. If I had to give it rating, I know we don't give it rating, I would give it a strong 3 stars to the show.
I agree. I would probably go like 3.5 or maybe even 4 if it was in a good day. But
joke.
I think there is a lot
over my dead body.
There's a lot of really good stuff in here that deserves a lot of praise and a lot of credit. And again, greater than the sum of its parts in terms of the wider MCU. Like not everything that comes out of this big arc of stories that we're getting is all going to be like WandaVision level of on the edge of your seat, can't wait to see it. I'm hoping Loki is. It looks great so far. But not everything is going to be like, the perfect execution that you're hoping it to be. But collectively speaking, they all add to each other and make each part better as it goes, because you're getting that time and insight with these characters and these stories, and that makes them more interesting and more you as an audience member more invested by it. Now the debate we've had before, is that really that great if someone's coming in new and they're trying to watch something, if half of it is all about what's happening elsewhere? It's a balance they have to strike. I think they got it pretty well here. Leaning maybe a little bit too much into like, you've got Zemo and you've got Karen, and like who the fuck is Karen? I don't remember Karen. Who's she? Whereas or Zemo, even for that matter, a lot of people probably no idea or remember Zemo at all, or certainly not even his name. Right. The good thing is now they do. Now they know a lot more about him. And now
you have another excuse not to end your subscription with Disney Plus and rewatch all the movies. Exactly. Go back to them and keep on watching like a fucking lunatic. So that's what I've been doing recently.
Wrap it up. Let's go. It's 3 a.m. here locally at our time.
It's 3 a.m. in your time zone. For me, it's 5 a.m. already.
My goodness me.
No, it's 3 a.m. as well. So I need to go and start working because it's already another day. So that is the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, available on Disney Plus, and that was the Blockbusters podcast episode 42. Thank you for staying with us for the 7 hours, and we appreciate that. Write yourself a check. We owe you for staying with us. Give us a rating. Love us. We love you. Conor, thank you for today. Stay safe. Until the next time. Bye-bye.
I'll see you down the road.
See you down the road, buddy.
And like that, he's gone.